Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 27th of July, 2021. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, I put out a tweet earlier today, basically this picture that I found in an article, and I basically said ETH is digital oil. Now, you can see on this picture, it's basically a table. There's a bunch of different kind of assets being compared to ETH and BTC here. Starting at the bottom, you have ETH, which has a market cap of 260 billion, and then all the way to the top, you have oil, which has a market cap of $107 trillion. Now, on the right-hand side of the table, you can see what the ETH price would be if the ETH price was at that market cap, and at each kind of like different market cap. It's comparing coal, natural gas, iron, gold, copper, platinum, silver, BTC, and uranium. Now, if ETH's market cap was the same as BTC's, ETH would be at $6,200. If ETH's market cap was the same as gold, ETH would be $137,913, which, I've spoken about how I think ETH long-term is going to $100,000, and you can see here that something as useless as gold, is worth that. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that Ethereum can be worth that one day. And then you just keep going up the list, right? And then you get to oil, which if ETH had the same market cap as oil, it would be worth $932,000, which is almost $1 million, obviously, per ETH, like per one ETH. Now, this is crazy when you kind of look at this and you kind of think to yourself, like, this would never happen. This is insane. Like, that would require, obviously, ETH to have over $100 trillion market cap, which, it's very far away from what it is today. Like, obviously, it's 260 billion today. 107 trillion is much further away than what we are here. It's about 400x from where we are today. But I think, it's funny because, like, over the years, I guess, like from even the earliest days of ETH's existence, it's always been referred to as like this digital oil, right? So that you basically use to essentially kind of like get your transaction included in blocks, aka pay fees. Now, I don't think that analogy is actually very accurate. I don't think ETH itself is oil. Gwei or is basically the oil, which kind of like is what pays the gas fees. Technically, it is ETH, obviously, but I don't think the analogy holds too well there. But ETH is also much more than oil, right? It's used for much more than paying fees on the network. But the funny thing is that oil obviously has like a large market cap because it is used by absolutely kind of like everyone in the world. Whether that's for their own kind of cars or whether that's for generating kind of like electricity and flying planes and all that sort of stuff and like boats. And obviously like oil is used more than anything else. It's the most used commodity in the world. That's why it has the biggest market cap and it's extremely valuable. And we've only got a finite amount of it too. I know there's still lots left. And from what I've seen, we've got like maybe 40 years worth of digging left to kind of like dig up oil. Maybe there's more. That's dependent on us not finding extra oil reserves and things like that on the earth. And, maybe we find them in space too. Who knows? If that's even possible, I don't even know. I don't know too much about that sort of stuff. But generally, I think that when you kind of like compare ETH to these sorts of things, it's a nice little thought experiment, but it kind of like, I guess, misses all of the value that ETH has rather than just like its use as gas fees, but its use as everything. Now, does that mean I think that ETH's going to be worth, much more than oil one day? No, not anytime soon, and for ETH to be worth as much as oil, it would mean that every single person in the world would need to be buying ETH, pretty regularly. Maybe not every single person, but most people either buying ETH or using something that consumes ETH. And sure, like you could make the argument that one day, the Ethereum network will be used so much and so heavily by everyone that ETH will be in such demand for kind of like, block space will be in such demand that the fees will be so high and ETH will be being burned with 1559, because obviously oil is burned as well when we use it, so it's kind of like finite. And that's kind of like the same concept with ETH. And then you could argue that we're also going to have like staked ETH. We're going to have ETH being used as a productive asset, as collateral and stuff like that. And you could definitely make the argument that ETH could potentially one day have a market cap this high. But it requires a lot of assumptions, of course. The biggest assumption is that Ethereum does indeed take pretty much like all the market share and essentially goes on to power the entire world's economy and the new internet and all this sorts of stuff. Like, that is a biggest assumption at the end of the day. Like, as bullish as I am on ETH, you can't just say, oh yeah, ETH's guaranteed to go to $1 million because it's guaranteed to do all this sort of stuff. Like, obviously, I personally have strong conviction and strong beliefs that the Ethereum network is going to go on to do great things. But you still got to make assumptions here. There's no guarantees in this sort of stuff. So it's just funny kind of like seeing this, and it's funny whenever I gave the $100,000 price prediction, and people were just like, you're absolutely insane. That's crazy. What the hell? Like, we're only at $2,000 or whatever. Even when we were at the highs, like 4,400, people are like, you're absolutely crazy. And it's like, well, I mean, I don't think so, because when you look at gold, like we wouldn't even have to have the same market cap as gold to be worth less than that. And you look at the rate of growth, and you look at how much adoption Ethereum still has left, and you look at everything that Ethereum can do or ETH can do that gold can't do, which is infinitely more. I just don't think it's far-fetched to kind of like give those kind of price predictions out there. Now, if you're expecting this to happen, in the short term, then obviously you're going to be upset when it doesn't. Even people were even having a go at me for the $10,000 price that I've been throwing out for quite a while, and they were saying, haha, when's $10,000? We're crashing, bull market's over, blah blah blah. And these people are just annoying, because I've been calling for ETH to $10,000 since 2019. It's not like I've been doing it just because the bull market was on. I mean, it was a big reason why I kept buying ETH, is because I truly believed it was going to 10,000 and beyond. And it's another big reason I'm buying ETH today and continue to buy it, is because I do believe it's going to 100,000 plus, and I have the conviction on that. So it's always funny, and that's why I try to avoid too much price talk and too much like giving actual price targets or anything like that, especially on Twitter, because generally when I do, I get like trolls and stuff like that, and it's just annoying. But I think, tweeting at something like this, I think it's just funny reading some of the replies. I mean, it wasn't really any troll replies. It's like just different people saying like different things, and saying kind of like making up jokes and things like that. And I mean, yeah, it's just funny kind of like seeing the jokes around here. It's like someone made a joke that which digital asset is Cardano, and someone replied, digital air with good marketing and an annoying boss. So yeah, I mean, that's always fun. But generally, if I do give like crazy price predictions, especially when the price is going down, I get like trolled to death. So try to avoid it, but definitely going to keep leaking the alpha to the Refuel watchers and listeners. But who knows? We'll see. Maybe in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, or whatever, we're going to look back on these kind of like videos on the Refuels, and we're going to see like me kind of saying this and saying it was crazy, and maybe ETH is at that price point. I don't know. Who knows? But I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't want to spend the whole episode talking about ETH prices. There was an interesting tweet from Rune Christensen, the founder of MakerDao, which had to do with what I was talking about yesterday with regards to regulations within DeFi. So the tweet thread basically starts with Rune saying, if the US bans or seriously interferes with the innovation happening in DeFi, it will be an own goal 10 times worse than China cracking down on DiDi, which paralyzed innovation. DeFi today is the most rapidly innovating sector in tech, and most of that innovation is US-centric. Now, he goes on to in the next few tweets here, which I won't kind of read out, but he goes on about like this kind of point here, and I wanted to kind of talk to this point a little bit. Basically, I want to disagree with one thing. I don't actually think most of the innovation is US-centric. I think that, someone else brought that up with Rune here, Patrick, who said that a big part of DeFi is Yearn, Curve, Aave, and they're not US-centric. Let's be humble. And then Rune says they are not from the US, yet they almost exclusively use USD stablecoins. So there's kind of this, I guess, like two prongs to this. There's US-centric innovation, aka teams based in the US building products within DeFi, and I think they're actually becoming a much kind of like smaller part of DeFi overall. But then you can look on the other prong and basically the flip side, where DeFi is basically all centered around USD at the end of the day. I mean, not even just DeFi, crypto in general. Like all the prices anyone ever quotes is in USD. Like even me, I never quote prices in AUD. I couldn't even tell you what the price of ETH was in AUD right now. I know what the price of ETH in USD is. I watch that all the time. But the AUD price, I've got no idea. I never even look at that. Even when I go to, sometimes when I'm doing yield farming and I have some ETH that I earn and I have to cash it out for taxes, I don't even know what it's going to be. I just like, okay, well, that's what the AUD is right now. Okay, sell that off. That's for taxes and keep the rest, as profits. But I think, both points hold merit here. Like the fact that more and more innovation is leaving the US because of these tight regulations is obviously a bad thing, but the fact that the USD is such a central part of DeFi and continues to be a central part of DeFi, I don't see that going away anytime soon. I don't know if I call that a good or bad thing. It just is, sort of thing, right? So I think that Rune is right in saying that the US banning or interfering or cracking down, really hard on DeFi is going to be bad for them in the long run. And I think, as I just mentioned, we've seen teams move out of the US or launch anonymously or launch as DAOs first. I mean, I discussed a lot of this yesterday, but I do believe that US or not, I think that a lot of teams are just going to have to launch at least as a DAO first, or like just as a pure DAO, not even have like a company attached to it at all. Have like so the way you could do it is you have like a DAO and MStable actually does this really well. You can have like a DAO, and then you can have like a company that has the original founding team that's a part of it, but the founding team isn't actually in control of the protocol. There's like a multi-sig that has different people kind of like on it. And the founding team is essentially just one prong of the DAO. And they're like obviously the builders for a while, and then you decentralize that out over time. And there's these things called working groups. The Index Corp does this really well, but Maker also has this, and a few other teams, where the different working groups are basically different like business departments if you were like a centralized company. So from that perspective, I think that's how a lot of these apps, a lot of these projects are going to be launching from now on. But generally, if you're based in the US, and you're launching like a big project, you either have to do what Uniswap Labs is doing, and that's play extremely defensively. Obviously they did their thing where they censored their own front end by removing some tokens, and then when they launched the Uni token, they launched it in such a way that I'm sure they had like lawyers go over it like with a fine-tooth comb many times, and they basically launched it in a way where I guess like all the liability over the token and the DAO was kind of like relinquished from them, and they've been taking a step back as much as they can. So I think that there's going to be more and more teams that do that. I mean, Compound did it back when they did their token as well. Obviously Maker is dissolving their foundation and has basically become fully decentralized, and we're going to see more and more of that happening. So I don't know if it actually matters in the long run too much about the US regulating, China regulating, this and this regulating, whoever wants to basically regulate it. I'm not too kind of like concerned about that, because I do believe that the long term, the healthiest way for DeFi to grow and to defend itself is to be DAO first, and is also to be with anon or pseudo anon founders as well, and not just founders but team members and people working on it, and having them distributed all over the globe as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think, Rune brought up a good point here that basically spoke to what I was talking about on yesterday's refuel. So I just wanted to cover that for today. So Joseph from the Ethereum Foundation shared Danny Ryan's latest blog post called Finalised number 27. So this is basically a brief update that Danny Ryan puts out about the Ethereum consensus layer, aka the ETH2 beacon chain, as you all of you will know about. So the TLDR of this update is that it's time to upgrade for London. So just a reminder here that even if you're staking and you're running your own Ethereum node, ETH1 node, you need to upgrade to London for the London hard fork, which is obviously going live next week on August 4th, 5th, depending on your time zone. And then he also kind of updated us on the merge checklist, which I kind of like went through on the refuel last week, and a draft EIP, which I also went through for the merge, and then some brief updates on the Altair devnets that launched and clients positioning themselves for mainnet. So you can see here now, Altair is the first ETH2 hard fork network upgrade, whatever you want to call it, that's going live relatively soon. There's been multiple devnets and things like that, which basically act as kind of like pre-test nets. And then this week, they expect to see another DevNet launched, followed by discussions by picking a date to fork Paramount, which is the long-standing beacon chain testnet. And then obviously we'll move to mainnet. So really cool to see progress happening on the consensus layer here. And we're getting closer and closer to the merge, right? I mean, it's August now. Merging Q1 2022, hopefully we get closer by the day. So not too much longer before we can get rid of proof of work and be a fully proof-of-stake Ethereum system. So L2Beat, which has become pretty much my favorite website to track L2 growth, has added another project, Sorare. I used to say it's Sorare, but someone said that it's Sorare, so I'm gonna call it Sorare from now on. But essentially, Sorare is basically I think a fantasy football game that's kind of like based on NFTs and stuff like that. And they're on layer 2. I think I talked about this on the refuel a few weeks ago. That's powered by Starkway's StarkEx. So you can kind of like track their growth now, their TVL, their like all the information about them, what they're using, what kind of technology they're using, and things like that. You can see here that they're not using rollups, they're using Validium, which is basically an off-chain data availability committee instead of putting the data on-chain. So it's got some kind of like trade-offs there, but definitely makes sense, I think, for NFT projects. Then you can see primary use case of NFT, hypothetical level of decentralization is high, current level of decentralization is low because contracts are upgradable. And I've spoken about this on the Refuel plenty of times before, where I basically said that a lot of these L2s are going to start with, centralized admin keys. They're going to start with upgradable contracts, all this sort of stuff. And that's just the way it's going to be for a while. And then they'll decentralize over time, which is totally fair. And I think they're not going to really decentralize until they've got their tokens out there. And I'm expecting every single L2 to have their own token. And I've mentioned this before, the Optimisms, the Arbitrums, StarkEx, zkSync, they're all going to have their own token. I mean, zkSync even said they're going to have their own token. So, and that token is going to be used for a few different things. I mean, you can bootstrap growth with that via liquidity mining. You can bootstrap decentralization via getting people to run sequences and paying them for that sort of stuff. And I mean, there's plenty of kind of ways to do it, but, I don't know when they're going to come out with tokens. I don't think we've got any kind of dates on this sort of stuff, but I think until that happens, the level of decentralization will be quite low there. So, and then, the website L2Beat also warns you about, the ability for the operators to steal funds. So yes, they can through the contract upgrade. And then is it permissionless? No. And only Sorare can produce new blocks on this right now. And then a bunch of other things here, like privacy and smart contracts and stuff like that. But anyway, back to the growth here. You can see that they've grown pretty steadily over the last, I guess, couple weeks here. They're a relatively new project, especially new on like layer 2 as well. But like I think they've been getting a lot of attention and action considering how big football or soccer, whatever you call it, is. I think, and NFTs, I mean, like fantasy football and stuff has been big for ages, and adding a monetary kind of like aspect to it, especially when it's crypto native and it's so fluid is incredibly, it works to supercharge it incredibly. So yeah, I guess great to see another project heading to L2 using StarkEx technology. I'm sure we're going to see more and more of these as time goes on. So the Gnosis Safe multi-sig kind of like wallet here, it basically supports Uniswap now, which is a major upgrade because essentially what you had to do to interact with Uniswap before, you basically had to use Wallet Connect, which is just an extra step, but now you can do that natively through Gnosis Safe. And basically you can interact with your different multi-sig wallets, whether that be your own or someone else, or kind of like one that you're on for a project or things like that, rather than having to do Wallet Connect and some other things. I mean, I know they had 1inch support and maybe Matcha. I know they had some decentralized aggregator support, but essentially you can do this with just like native Uniswap now, which is really, really cool. So definitely check that out if you're using Gnosis Safe. Etherscan added a really interesting feature today, which I think is going to be more and more, I guess, like more and more appropriate as time goes on. So what this feature does, it is a button that allows you to check check each address and what changes it has been used on. So as I say here, simply click on the Blockscan icon on any address page and see where it appears in up to 17 EVM chains. Now, these EVM chains include things like Ethereum, obviously, Polygon, there's FTM Phantom, and then Ropsten and Kovan, and I'm sure they're going to add layer 2s in here as well and stuff like that. So, I mean, this is just another awesome feature that Etherscan has added to their already awesome block explorer. And I think that, we can expect to see all the layer 2s added here as well. And there's already, I mean, the layer 2s like Optimism and I mean, the sidechains like Polygon and things like that have their own versions of the explorers. But the thing is that if you want to know if an address on Etherscan, like when you're looking it up on Etherscan, has been used on other chains, then this is the way to do it. And I think obviously they're going to support the kind of like Etherscan like block explorers that they've built for other chains here. So I mean, at this point, Etherscan's like the default, right? So we're going to continue to see more and more chains kind of be added here. So if you haven't checked out that button yet, you can just go search for any address, and provided that it has been used on another chain, you'll be able to see kind of like what it's been used for and get a link to it and everything like that, which I think is a super, super useful feature. So I missed this the other day, but Anish from Paradigm, together with Mark Balin, or I don't know if Mark hacked this together with Anish, but definitely he came up with the idea. But essentially Anish hacked together poornft.co, which is a way for anyone to take out a loan against their NFTs. So The way it works is it uses a hybrid auction mechanism, so you can borrow against your collection or earn fixed rewards. There's a bunch of kind of different loans here and people using it. Anish describes kind of how it works in here. Basically says, by running an active auction for each lent NFT, we solve the problem of a pricing oracle. NFT owners can draw directly against their supporters' bids. So essentially, I guess like in layman terms, if someone bids on your NFT, you can basically borrow up to that amount of bid because you know that someone is going to be there to buy the NFT or to liquidate it if you don't pay back the loan. So I think it's actually a pretty smart way to do it. At least that's my understanding of it. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. I don't know, but I think that's a pretty cool way to do it. And there's so many more, I guess, like things that can be done in the NFT ecosystem here. I mean, taking out a loan on your NFT is something that I think is like somewhat of a holy grail for Ethereum and for DeFi because really, I personally love productive assets, but like pretty much all my NFTs are unproductive. I mean, I have a CryptoPunk that is just a common one. It's worth $50,000, right? That's the floor for CryptoPunks right now. And I can't really do anything with that. I mean, I can put it into like an NFTX index and stuff like that. But generally, and I mean, generally a lot of this stuff is tax events too. Like I trigger capital gains tax on things. So it's just a bit of a mess. So being able to use it as like collateral in a safe way and borrow kind of like assets against it, I think is going to be the most interesting thing for a lot of people out there. So cool to see this project kind of hacked together by Anish, who's just a machine. I mean, he builds these things in like a weekend essentially from the idea that he sees on Twitter, and he's done this for other projects in the past. So really cool to see this. But it's on Rinkeby. You can go play around with it. I'll link it in the YouTube description for all of you. So speaking of NFTs, I forgot to cover this the other day. I don't know how I missed it, but 0x Mons released zkNFT, which is a proof of concept NFT marketplace showcasing the zkSync NFT API. So essentially, this is in alpha, so some things may be unstable as 0x Mons has kind of like warned here. But essentially, you can go to zkNFT.xyz if it loads up here. I'm just going to let that load there. But as 0x Mons describes it, zkSync is a ZK rollup that supports ERC20 tokens, NFTs, and asset swaps. They're adding full programmability later this year, including Solidity support. And so what's live on zkNFT today? Minting is live. So you can mint your NFTs on there and put in your metadata and things like that. And the images are also pinned to IPFS using nft.storage, which is really, really cool. You can manage your NFTs, you can view them and view a collection on them, things like that. You can do swaps, which is obviously very important. And then, I think there's a bunch of other features here, and it's kind of like open source as well and everything like that, which is really, really cool. So there's a blog post with a little bit more details here. And there's also zero additional marketplace fees as well, which is really cool. But this blog post will give you a more detailed look at it than I can. So definitely go read this if you haven't yet and visit the site, which it loaded up for me. Obviously, you're not going to connect my wallet here, but you can still see like mint, explore, swap. I mean, I love the artistic design here as well. This looks really cool. I've been following 0x Mons for quite a while, and they're one of my favorite kind of builders in the space. Just building out in the open, building really cool things, and making it look good as well. So kudos to you, 0x Mons. I know you're a regular Daily Gwei watcher. So there's your shout out. Basically, anyone who essentially isn't paying attention to to them just yet in the projects they're working on, I highly suggest you do so because they're working on some really interesting stuff in the NFT space. So speaking of L2s or layer 2s, Sandeep from Polygon put out a teaser tweet where he said this weekend they finalized, they being Polygon team, finalized one of the biggest game changes for Polygon. This would be more profound than Matic's expansion to Polygon and will set Polygon's tech to provide extremely scalable layer 2. So essentially, I don't know what they're teasing here. I don't exactly have any insider information here or anything like that. But essentially, they're teasing L2s, like rollups and things like that, which I think is really, really cool. I think that Polygon has gotten a bad rap for a little while because, really they have like the Plasma chain live, which isn't really used in the POS chain, and people were kind of like calling it an L2, and people were getting angry about that, and blah, 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 blah. Like, there's all this drama going on. But I think, Polygon has always been a suite of scalability solutions. They're not just the POS chain. I mean, they even released a new data availability chain, or announced that the other day, which is going to aid a lot of projects, and they've worked with other teams on that, which is really cool. But their new L2s that they're going to bring out as well is going to be even better. So, I mean, the age of scaling is here. The age of Ethereum scaling is here. And don't blink or you'll miss it, because there's things coming out pretty much every day now. And, I know that a lot of this is just announcements and like, we're coming soon and stuff like that. But, things do get released. I mean, we saw Uniswap on Optimism. Arbitrum has 4 days to go live on public mainnet, or else I have to eat my hat. So if you're listening, Arbitrum team, please save my hat. We'll see see what happens there. But, I'm expecting them to go live relatively soon as well, as I've said plenty of times in the past. But, I mean, it's only been a month or so we'll see. We'll see what happens there. So a bit more of other news around MakerDao here. So the MakerDao growth, working group announced that delegation will arrive to MakerDao on August 2nd, which means that if you're a Maker token holder, you'll be able to delegate them for voting and governance. Just in case you want to. So you can delegate to different kind of like people in governance. Now, this has been a key feature that MakerDao has been missing for quite a while. Obviously, there's already delegate governance in things like Uniswap and Compound, and it's worked quite well, I believe, in Gitcoin, things like that. And I think that delegated governance is the way forward. I've spoke about this on the Refuel before, but it's essentially a liquid democracy where people can kind of like, stake or at least delegate their tokens to someone or a group and say, okay, well, I want you to use my tokens to vote on things. And then if they vote wrong or like against what you believe, then you can kind of like take your tokens away and delegate them to someone else. This I think is really cool because it means you don't have to wait a lot. The reason I call it liquid democracy is because in an actual democracy, you have to wait, right? You have to wait like many years to kind of like vote someone out, and then you don't really have much of a voice. You have like one vote, whereas with I guess like a delegation, the more kind of assets you have, I guess the larger your voice. And yeah, there are concerns about plutocracies and things like that. Maybe it becomes like a liquid plutocracy. I don't know. Maybe democracy is the wrong word here. I don't want to get into the politics of it too deeply here, but I do think the delegation method is better than no delegation because you're just going to have lots of people who don't vote with their tokens, and then those votes just basically go to waste. So I'm glad to see MakerDao kind of implement this. All right, last up here, we have Lyra Finance that announced that they have raised a $3.3 million seed round led by Framework Ventures and Parafy Capital with support from a bunch of other funds here. And a full disclosure, I supported them as an angel. So for those who aren't familiar with Lyra, they are a layer 2 native options protocol that is built on optimism and that's spun out of the Synthetics project. So I've been following them for quite a while, definitely jumped at the chance to support them because of the fact that I think that no project has kind of like, I guess, like nailed options protocols just yet. And things like that. I think that a lot of them are doing a lot of interesting things. There's a lot of options protocols out there, but I don't think any of them have nailed it just yet. And Lyra has like a few different novel mechanisms that they're using. I really like that they're going L2 first. I think that that's definitely going to help them with bootstrapping a lot of different things and bootstrapping kind of liquidity and stuff like that. So really cool to see that. So yeah, I guess like disclosure here, I participated in the round, but I'm glad to see that they got funded here. And it was announced like a few weeks ago. I think I mentioned it on the Refuel that if you're a synthetic staker or have been a synthetic staker in the past, you're going to get airdrop tokens from Lyra, Thales, and Quenta, which are the 3 projects that kind of spun out of Synthetics. So, keep an eye out for that as well if you're an SNX holder or staker. But on that note, I'm going to finish it up there for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.